Howdy, boys and girls. It is the final final game of the 27 college football season, and therefore the final edition of the Carla and Crappy Show for this season. Hi, Carla.
Hi. I can't believe it's over already.
It is over already.
Doesn't it feel like we just started this thing?
This one has actually, it has gone quickly. It has been a crazy amount of fun. The semifinal games, we're just nuts. I mean, to get two games like that, the double overtime game, and then just a kind of old school hammering. That was cool, but could not have worked out better. But yeah, I mean, we're down to the last one, of course, Georgia and Alabama. We will get to that in a second. As we do, we will look back before we look ahead to basketball season and other things that might be coming.
Hockey season.
Hockey season. There's a hockey season. There's a hockey season coming out that I will finally start. Seriously, hockey basically does not exist until after the national championship game, and then I'm like, okay, I'm ready now. And but yeah,
that's probably true for the Penguins too.
Yes, maybe after we'll see what happens, what they look like after Monday's game. We'll that'll be an interesting thing to check on. But first, Carla, do you have what would be your one thing from? You can be anywhere from bowl season. What has stood out for you? So
the biggest thing that stood out for me is something that we actually talked about quite a bit on Twitter, and that is cheers to the Big Ten.
Cheers to the Big Ten.
For
except for those stepchildren in Ann Arbor.
Right, which is what I was going to say, is that cheers to the Big Ten, and once again, furthering proof twice this weekend that you can never trust a Harbaugh.
It's true. It's true. I would trust John much sooner than I would trust the flaky boy in Ann Arbor. But yeah, I was my joy over the Big Ten's performance in the bowl season is offset a little bit by having the two SEC championship teams in the championship game.
True, but yeah, it's about time that the Big Ten finally, because for all those years, in last decade when everybody just like ripped on the Big Ten because they stunk it up when it came to bowl season. Mm-hmm. And now finally, it looks like maybe the conference has turned a corner. Yes, it stinks that the Big Ten was left out of the playoff, but gosh, Buckeyes don't lose to Iowa. Penn State don't lose to Michigan State. Right? I mean, they set their own fate. But it was nice to see them play well across the board, other than absolutely. The stepchildren, and that's I have a feeling that's something we're going to talk about at length next fall. Should there be another edition of the Carla and Crappy Show? Coach Harbaugh and his antics in Ann Arbor. They are. I know things aren't going well. It is that people are not pleased with him in the state up north. So we'll see how that goes. My thing. You sort of referenced it indirectly. I want to talk about the eye test, and I'm really not pleased with an all SEC title game. To say it bugs the crap out of me would be putting it mildly. However, I'm not saying that something different. I'm not saying that I'm not going to make an argument about Ohio State versus Alabama and who should have been in there. And in fact, after having watched, many bowl games, the first semifinal, the Rose Bowl, half of the Sugar Bowl, I think this worked out the way it should have worked out. I don't see Ohio State hanging with any of those teams. Maybe Clemson, just because of the way they play.
Maybe. If you drop Ohio State down in that same instance against the Clemson team playing as they did, I think Ohio State's defense is better than it was a year ago. So perhaps that helps. But Ohio State's offense in the Cotton Bowl
kind of looked like it did towards, through much of November, which wasn't all that good. So I would love to have been there. I think the results, however, would have been ugly, and I think we got the Final Four that that we should have, perhaps with one exception. Carla, if you are in charge of college football, you and you alone, what would you do in an instance of a team like UCF? Should they be involved in the playoff? Should there be an expansion? Should there be like a play-in for a group of 5 champion? How do you? They handled Auburn, and I said when we were talking about bowl games, I'm really pleased that Ohio State did not have to play them.
Yeah.
If we're talking about the eye test, it's you look at that team and you think, I wonder if they could hang on in this situation. How do we get them involved?
Yeah, that's the $1 million question, isn't it? Quite literally in some cases. But it's one of those things, and I said this when we did that quick little the Final Four was announced, and we each recorded our thoughts on that. And I said in my recording on that gosh, I wish there's a way to put UCF in this in somehow. I'm not really. I don't think I'm in favor of expanding the playoff, because I think even if you took 8 teams and put 8 teams in the playoff, we're still going to have this conversation around 9 and 10. The argument is never going to end. So you're never going to have that definitive. And this year, based on what we've talked about with Ohio State and Penn State, other than UCF, there was a clear line of delineation between those top 4 teams and everybody that came below it. And we could see that in the bowl games. But you're right, we have this UCF calamity. I don't know what the solution is. And that's the worst part of all this, because, I was talking to my parents on the phone last night, and I said, gosh, I hope maybe the coaches poll at the end of the year has the guts to put UCF at number 3. I hope they do that. Yeah. Do they deserve number 3? How would UCF have played against Oklahoma? That's, right.
That is a UCF schedule versus a Power 5 schedule, even with the cupcakes that the SEC has built in. That's what makes this comparison hard. Yeah,
but based on the way Clemson played, I wouldn't hesitate to put UCF ahead of Clemson in final rankings. I would the playoff rankings put UCF at 4 because they played better than Clemson did. I think you have to leave Oklahoma at 3, just because of how well they played in that game, and how epic that Rose Bowl really was. And I think your 1 and 2 have to be the result of the championship game. So, but maybe that's consolation, and we get to say hi to a cat in the last episode. Hi.
That's Cookie.
Hi, Cookie.
She's going to sit on the desk, but
okay.
I could see. You're right. You can keep expanding this, until you've got a 64-team field, like you do the basketball tournament, if that's however many are in the basketball tournament these days. And the last teams out are always going to complain. I could see, and this would address directly a situation like this, where you have the top-rated group of 5 team playing a 5th power conference team as sort of a play. And something like that.
Yeah. I've seen scenarios where they've put 6 teams in the playoff, and so then your 1 and 2 get a bye.
Yeah.
But then at the same time, then you're talking about messing with the bowl system even more than you already have, because then you would have 2 teams that don't get to go to bowl games. Does that matter? I don't know.
There's still bowl games. We've got plenty of bowl games. And bowl games, especially, you expand this to the New Year's 6, you still have enough of those guys who would love to have the associated TV ratings with a playoff game rather than just a plain old bowl game. I don't know. It's an interesting thing. And as I'm sure you saw, we're taping this on Wednesday. before the championship game, and the folks at UCF have just gone ahead and said they're going to name themselves national champions, which is awesome. Why not?
Yeah.
Why not? And I suppose one could make the argument that if Alabama wins on Monday, that there's another undefeated team that someone could vote as a national champion. It ain't gonna happen, but whatever. I would.
I think so. Depending on how that all plays out on Monday night and how good the game is, it wouldn't stun me to see them get some votes.
Yeah,
the first place votes. Why not?
So we will toast one more time to Goon Squad Sarah. And her UCF Knights and happy national championship. You guys actually you deserve that. But then there's this other game on Monday. Monday night at 8 p.m. Georgia versus Alabama in the Oh Lord Won't You Buy Me a Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta. Alabama is favored by we're early here, so Alabama is favored anywhere from 3.5 to 5 points. The over/under is an appropriately sluggish 45.
Yeah.
And I would really, considering these defenses, I would really think about really consider the under for this one. What do you think?
Yeah, this is interesting. I'm going to throw in one little note in about that epic Rose Bowl. That I think my favorite moment in the Rose Bowl, I was, obviously scrolling through Twitter as you do when you watch college football. And I think my favorite part of the whole thing was my former colleague, Pat Forty, who got sent to the Sugar Bowl. So he's in New Orleans.
Right.
And he started live tweeting series from the Sugar Bowl because he knew nobody was watching their game, which was hilarious. Like, he's sitting up in the box, and apparently everybody in the box was glued to the TV and praying that nothing happened in their game. And so he started tweeting series. He's like, Bama out 3 and out on first drive. It's like we're all watching the Rose Bowl. We're getting play-by-play by 40. So Pat, thank you. That was awesome.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, no, that was probably my favorite part, is just how ridiculous that went, and people tweeting about how angry Saban was going to be because they were eating into his screen time, which I thought was kind of funny. But okay, so game at hand. So Alabama, I'll start with them because technically they're the lower rated team, so they will be playing the role of visitors in more ways than just one in this game. With this being essentially a home game for Georgia.
Yep.
The Bama defense, they did what they had to do against Clemson. They made that Clemson team look like it didn't belong in the playoff, even though, it did belong in the playoff. They just destroyed the Clemson offense. Kelly Bryant and the Tigers just could not get anything going. And they held Clemson, who, kind of uses the rush to kind of set up the pass. Yep. 64 yards in the entire game. What are you going to do? Bama's the number 1 rush defense in the country.
Yes. And
they proved it in that game. The interesting thing about Alabama, though, is I went back and I looked at drive charts for their scoring drives. They didn't have to really do much on offense. And they still managed to win the game because they didn't have to, because their defense won the game for them. The two offensive, they only scored twice on offense.
Right.
First was a field goal. That drive was 47 yards. Their only offensive touchdown came after a drive of 46 yards. So they were starting in plus yardage at the beginning of those drives. So that's, again, defense setting up the short field.
Yep.
The last two were, the 27-yard offensive drive that came off of that Fat Man touchdown, which was probably the best moment ever in that game. Someone said that they should award a special honorable mention Heisman to that kid for interception and touchdown.
Can we have a postseason Heisman? Would that work? Maybe.
Maybe and he deserves it 100%. I am 100% down for that. That was probably one of the coolest things I've ever seen in a bowl game. To start the drive and end the drive, as Tess said about 17 times.
Yes.
Because that's what Tess does.
Yes.
But so they never really, and their other touchdown was off of a pick six 13 seconds later. So they didn't have to do anything on offense. This is not an Alabama offense that is going to go out there and outscore Georgia, which is interesting here. This game is entirely about Alabama's defense and Georgia's offense, right? Georgia's offense was spectacular, and it didn't have to work real hard because we knew Oklahoma's defense was terrible. probably another one of my favorite moments from the Rose Bowl was somebody posted a picture of when Nick Chubb went down the was it Nick Chubb or Sony Michel? That in the third quarter that like it was Sony Michel because Jake Fromm pulled him over to the other side because he read the field and saw it. Handed it off to Michel and he went around the side and nobody touched him into the end zone in the third quarter. Yep. Somebody actually took a screenshot of where he made the cut and photoshopped 9 of him in a line.
Okay.
Not only did one Sony Michel fit through that hole, 9 Sony Michels could have fit through that hole. I mean, we knew this about the Alabama defense, and it finally bit them in this game. And, you know, the entire time, everybody was just like, Georgia, don't throw past the rest of the game. Just hand it to your backs and let them run because they can't stop them. Mm-hmm. That's not going to be the case in this game, going up against the number 1 defense in the country. So that's what it all boils down to. Bama's number 1 in points against, number 1 in rush defense against this Georgia offense. And I keep talking because I really can't. I don't know how that's all going to shake out. Jalen Hurts is no Baker Mayfield, so that's comfort if you're the Georgia defense.
Yes.
You're not going to have to do a ton to slow down the Alabama offense.
Right.
The other thing that Georgia has going for them on offense is the fact that, and it's unfortunate, is that Alabama's going to be out another linebacker for this game because Jennings went off the field with a knee tweak. He posted today that he actually had surgery.
And he's out. Yeah.
And he's out. And I mean, that's a depleted linebacking core to begin with. And now you just lost probably one of the best linebackers in the game on New Year's Day. A good run offense against a team that doesn't have linebackers, and you don't have to slow them down. Everything on this, I'm looking at this, everything says pick Alabama. Saban's never lost to a former assistant. He's 11-0 against all of his former assistant coaches. Mm-hmm. Everything says pick Alabama. And I think I'm going to pick Georgia.
Okay.
And it's a gut because I like the fact there's two running backs. I like Jake Fromm's confidence at the end of that game against Oklahoma. He had poise. I like Georgia's special teams coming up when they needed to. Yeah, I mean that blocked field goal. I mean, obviously that won them the game.
Yes.
But they just played well on special teams the entire night. And I think if they can do that, and they're going to have momentum because heck, they're playing at home. And I know Alabama travels well, but there's just something about that. I wish it was still the Georgia Dome because there really was magic for Georgia in the Georgia Dome. But it's right next door. The Georgia Dome is still there's still pieces of rubble in the Georgia Dome next door.
It's practically the same thing.
There might be a MARTA bus parked out front still. I don't know. Yeah. So grab a piece of the rubble from the Georgia Dome, take it into the locker room with you, Georgia, and go win yourselves a national championship.
That's an idea for a trophy. That's something that Georgia might be able to work with. It'd
be better than the Land Grant Trophy.
Yes, it would be that. I obviously this is a tough choice, and you've gone over the statistical stuff. So going over that stuff again is just redundant. I mean, if you're just looking at this on paper, actually, when you give Alabama an edge because of Nick Saban. You mentioned his record against former assistants. Even if Kirby is not a former assistant, I think you look at those two guys and you think it's Saban. It's Nick Saban. That's where the edge is. But here's where I think the edge for this game is, and this is not something I would have said ever. After seeing Georgia play a little bit earlier in the season, and it's Jake Fromm. Georgia's running game is what Georgia's running game is, and early in the season, Jake didn't have to do anything. He didn't have to be a good quarterback. He had to put the ball in Nick Chubb's belly, and without fumbling, and get out of the way. And that's he had to do that efficiently, and the check down pass to the flat once in a while, and his numbers were shaky, and his performances were shaky. What I saw in the Rose Bowl, however, granted against an offense that isn't even close to the one that he's going to see on Monday night,
right.
But he was 20-29, 210 yards, 2 touchdowns, no picks, and it's not just the statistical stuff. He made tight throws. He made throws under pressure. He hit small windows, and against Alabama,
he read the field beautifully.
Yes.
I posted that on Twitter. I'll go on the record here too. I said before Fromm declares for the NFL draft, because he's not staying all 4 years.
Yes.
But before he declares for the NFL draft, he will win a Heisman because of how well he sees the field as a true freshman. That's
the point
incredible.
you made about the check play. He moves the running back to the other side and they go ahead and score. That's him. That's his read. So what the progress he's made from like when they played Notre Dame and he can't throw the damn ball. To when he beats Oklahoma in double overtime, and he is making tight throws. He's working under pressure. He's reading the field really, really well. And granted, he has a much tougher chore on Monday than he did against Oklahoma. But his improvement, I mean, everything else being equal, right? The two monster defenses, especially Alabama's, but Georgia's fourth in the country in scoring defense. So this is not a shaky defense by any stretch. All other things being equal, I think that kid's improvement, and how he kept his feet under him, and the way he performed in the Rose Bowl. Again, this doesn't have to be an All-American performance. He has to be smart with the ball, and he's going to have to make a few really, really tight throws, but he's not going to have to do a ton to outscore Alabama. And I think he proved at the end of the season, in particular in the Rose Bowl, that he's capable of doing that. So this is a little bit of a gut pick for me too, but I think Georgia's going to win this one.
Yeah, it's interesting. The name I didn't drop when I was talking about Georgia, and I need to, was Roquan Smith, who was just all over the field for that Georgia defense. 11 tackles, 4 solo. Like it was just crazy. Yes. Every time that a play would happen near the sideline, it's like, oh look, it's Roquan again. I mean, and if you're the Alabama offense, put a hat on that guy.
Gotta find him. Better find him.
He's going to be incredible in the NFL when he gets there, just because of the way. I mean, he's just a hawk. He was just all over the place. But yeah, it's going to be interesting on Monday night, and Georgia can't turn the ball over. If Georgia turns the ball over, that's an entirely different game. And
that's part of the way. It's not just that Fromm's numbers have improved, but he's seeing the field really, really well, and he's being smart with the football. And I think that's going to be the difference. Carla, what was your favorite thing about this football season?
Other than UCF was going to be my thing, and then we talked about it because I think that's really cool.
It can be your thing still. It can be your thing, and it's definitely a cool thing.
Saquon Barkley.
Okay.
It's hard not to like him. It's hard not to like what he did this year. We're going to miss him next year at Penn State, but kudos to him for making for first of all playing in the darn Fiesta Bowl, which so many. And I don't know whether I believe him or not when he said that he didn't have his mind made up going into the Fiesta Bowl. I don't know. I think he probably had I think he had one foot out the door already. Probably. But kudos to him for playing the game, and going out there and giving us one last taste of what he's capable of. And I hope he lands somewhere great in the NFL. But that was really a lot of fun watching him play this year.
I hope the Browns draft him, actually. don't pick another quarterback. God, he's going to be so good. Draft him.
Are you going to go to the parade in Cleveland?
No, my folks are going to be here this weekend, and I would have to be really, really drunk to actually enjoy that, and that just gets into a messy thing if I'm in a different city. So Barkley. It is hard to argue that he's the best player in the conference, the Big Ten this year, and he's going to have, if he stays healthy, man. He's going to have a great NFL career, and I would not mind, for the record, if that happened to be in Cleveland. But that's something we'll get to. I'm also going to pick on a player, and I stopped when we were getting ready and put on the 16 jersey because I wanted to honor not just Ohio State's, but the Big Ten's most prolific offensive player in history. And he didn't always look great. He didn't win all of the big games, but he won most of them. He got Ohio State to a national championship. He got Ohio State to Big Ten championships. He did everything with handled the pressure of playing at a university like Ohio State with grace. And we are even the people who griped about JT Barrett are going to miss him now that he is done. So I will say cheers to Saquon Barkley.
Cheers.
And I will say cheers to JT Barrett. Two
He's
players
finally graduating.
I think so. I think so.
Is that
I think
it just feels like he's been there for 7 years.
I'm half expecting to read a thing when spring practice opens, like, well, JT Barrett's they found more eligibility for him. He's gonna play half of the 2018 season. We'll see how that goes.
Yeah.
Carla, I should thank you.
Yes.
For another awesome season. We should thank AJ for his participation. We should thank everyone who hung out with us for Bullapalooza once again. And obviously, we need to thank you guys. Since we did the audio version of the podcast this time, we've got a decent sense. There's a freaky number of people who actually listen and watch this.
It's slightly terrifying.
I don't know what the deal is, but we are grateful that you do. Thank you very much for sticking with us for the whole season. Enjoy the game on Monday, and who knows? Maybe we will talk to you again next fall.
Here's hoping.